to Resist the Empire, a libertarian view of the Star Wars universe. This is your one-stop shop for news, events, and topics in the Star Wars canon. From a libertarian perspective, here are your hosts, Brian McQuaid and Roger Paxton.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome to Resist the Empire. My name is Brian McQuaid.
And I'm Roger Paxton.
How you doing tonight, Roger?
Man, I am incredible right now.
I'm super stoked.
This has been the best 2 weeks to be a Star Wars fan, pretty much, with all the new stuff coming out, all the new information.
Yeah, it's great. So we, it was like halfway through the first quarter when Tanya was like, yeah, you know, the Star Wars trailer night. And it's actually Tanya that had reminded me. I was reminding myself all day.
Oh, I'd been waiting all day.
Well, I had been reminding myself all day. And then I think I was just like busy watching my fantasy football team or something when
You were
she
at work
said something.
when that?
No, this because let's see, I was home.
Okay.
So because it was Columbus Day.
Oh, right,
and
right,
I was
right.
off, yeah.
Right.
So I had the game on and stuff, and it was like the middle of the first quarter when she had mentioned it. I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go see if tickets are going up for sale now, because me and my buddy Ben, when The Force Awakens came out, everybody was online trying to get tickets, right? Mm-hmm. And the internet just like pretty much completely froze up. Anybody that was trying to buy tickets, like you couldn't get on the websites anywhere. They were all locked up. And everything.
It happens quick.
Yeah,
It's a big movie.
Yeah, so we left work because we were at work and drove to the theater, and we were able to purchase our tickets. And you know, it hadn't been the halftime yet. They hadn't shown the trailer yet, and they were specifically saying
it was like 10 minutes or 15 minutes even before the half even came to. So.
Yeah, when we got it. Yeah, it was like halfway through the first quarter or something like that, you know? So and so during Force Awakens, we encountered the same thing where people couldn't get them online. We went to the theater, and they weren't supposed to sell the tickets until the trailer came out, right? But I don't think the theaters care, right? They're just like, whatever, we're putting it up whenever. Anticipating that, I went during, halfway through the first quarter, and I got like 8 tickets, for the fan event, which is the first showing.
Yeah. Now the tickets were pricey. Were they $33 a piece? But there's like a poster. We get like
collector's cards, like
and there's like some additional video features that we get to see.
I'm a little upset with Fandango because the poster is literally for the person that purchased the ticket.
We should put it in the studio.
And they were a little it was kind of a bit vague, about that. So I wasn't too thrilled about that. But there's other things going on there. So really looking forward to that first showing. Good seats.
Super stoked.
Yep. So the beta, did you get to play any Battlefront 2?
I did. I played, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours or so. And man, it is so much better than the first one. So much.
Nice.
I mean, I can't even describe the differences. It's like an entirely different game.
Oh, that's good to hear. I didn't actually play the first one, mainly because there was no campaign mode. Right.
I got it for the kids primarily.
Yeah. I'm not a big first-person shooter fan, as I've said before, but I actually had a lot of fun playing this, and I spent the entire time playing Galactic Assault, 20 versus 20.
Yeah.
And I had a blast. So really looking forward to that. And today, the new story trailer dropped for it. Have you seen that?
I did. It was a minute and a half of just pure goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, Iden Versio's character, of course, you've read Battlefront 2.
Yeah.
Iden Versio's character is just such a dynamic character anyway. I just love her. And the way that Janine, what's her name? The woman who plays her, the way she portrays her on screen is just phenomenal. And I love it. And not to mention the fact that she's also the one that read the audiobook for Battlefront 2, which was a really cool tie-in too.
So I love the way, like, when she's escaping, she gives them the salute.
Right.
That was great.
Right, and it goes out the airlock. Yeah, that was really slick.
So there was one quick scene in there I saw where she was with 2 other guys. I'm going to assume that those 2 are Gideon Hask and Del Meeko.
Yes. I assume as well. They didn't specify that, but I can't imagine who else they would be.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, the novel Battlefront 2 Inferno Squad, that book is essentially a prequel to this video game as far as her story is concerned.
Tells how she took over and how she became part of Inferno Squad and became the captain of it and all of that. It was really good stuff.
And I made a mental note. I didn't see anyone else there, so I don't know if they're operating as a 3-person team now. They had a 4th person. person, so I don't know.
We don't want to give away what happened to that fourth person in the book.
But I don't know if they
Right.
picked up like an intel kind of person or what.
Yeah.
So
So what did you think of the book? I see that you finished it.
yeah, I loved it.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
I thought it was awesome, and I'm glad I got it done before the game because I'm eager to see that story continue.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to the direction her character is going to take.
Yeah, for sure.
So I played a little bit of and I've got alpha talk in here. I'm not going to be able to talk much about it. One, it's an alpha, so I don't even really know what I can say about it, but it's a mobile game, Star Wars Rise. And you basically, it's one of these kind of, you build facilities and then you trade with other players, et cetera, kind of thing. Yeah. Not my kind of game.
Yeah.
But
is it canon?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there's anything canon related in it. It's just a typical kind of like build your buildings and go fight stuff kind of game. So if you like that kind of thing, hoarding resources and building things, maybe that's up your alley. You might want to check that out. So Stephen, one of our listeners, brought to our attention an update on that Hamill memorabilia law in California.
Right.
Reason had an update on that, and it said next year California's bookstores will once again be able to host author signing events without fearing an expensive lawsuit. The threat of those suits sprang from a 2016 law that tried to crack down on sales of fake autographed memorabilia by requiring retailers to provide certificates of authenticity for any autographed merchandise worth more than $5. And last week, the governor signed a bill that loosened those rules, and now it's going to be updated to $50 for most autographed memorabilia. But books, fine art, furniture, and decorative objects will be excluded from the certificate requirement, according to the Times. So they've already gone back on this horrible law.
Well, as they should. I mean, that was just ridiculous anyway. All that was going to stifle these people making money is essentially what it was going to do. It was going to be so onerous and so difficult, and it was going to completely dramatically increase the price of these signatures because now you have to go through all of this regulatory body to make sure it's a legal signature. It would have absolutely been a huge detriment, not only to the actors, but also to the people who love them.
Yeah, so we have the link in there if you want to read more on that story. And now, for those of you who are panicking, we're going to talk about the trailer. What do you think we're going to do here? Not talk about it at all?
What trailer? There was a trailer?
Yeah, so we're going to do it.
So how many times have you seen it?
Honestly, not as much as I'd like. I
Really?
probably only watched it like 10 to 12 times, I'll be honest. Yeah.
That's all. Oh, that's funny. I probably did 15 or 20. I mean, I've watched it over. Of course, I watched it with the kids, I don't know, 5 or 6 times back to back, as soon as it came out, and several times since then. But
yeah, you did a little breakdown for us here, which was nice of you. I didn't have.
I did because this is a big moment, so I wanted to make sure there was so much to break down. So the trailer, of course, opens up with Kylo, and he's kind of he's standing there by himself, looking. He's obviously on a ship, on a cruiser, and he's overseeing these the construction of, looks like some first order vehicles and things like that. He's just basically overseeing what's going on. And then it immediately cuts to Crate, and we get a really close-up shot of the new RtE016s with their gorilla-like feet, which was really cool. And there were even some older AT-ATs in the mix, which was cool. And it showed the size difference. Man, those RtE016s are huge compared to those AT-ATs. So that was really cool.
The AT-M6s, right, with those like claw feet, they have like those ridged legs.
Yep. They're much more sturdy, I guess, to stop speeders from wrapping cord or cable around them.
That's what I've heard, is if that was attempted, it would just cut the cord.
Right.
So I don't know. That's kind of what I heard from a YouTuber, I think, or something like that.
They learned from the Imperial mistakes.
Yeah. So that was interesting.
So then, I mean, there's a lot of cuts in this, so it's going to cut all over the place. Then it cuts to Kylo leading a group of flame troopers. And man, they just look so good. Into a cave. And I would imagine it looks like Crate, because it looks like there's a little bit of red on the ground in the cave. And then we cut to Kylo Ren. He's wearing his mask. He's kneeling, and it looks like he's kneeling before Snoke, because then it shows him picking up his lightsaber, and there's 2 Praetorian guards in the background. So I assume he's in Snoke's chambers at that point. And then over these first shots, all of this first beginning part, we get Snoke's voice, and he's saying, "When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special." Now, of course, we're led to believe that he's talking to Kylo in these shots because, they're basically showing Kylo over and over again. But, I think this might be misdirection. I think he might be talking to Rey when he's saying this. And later on in the trailer, we'll get to why I believe that. There's even been some speculation as of late that he may have been the one who left Rey on Jakku. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
I thought the same thing when I heard that. I'm always on the lookout for editing tricks, things they do to kind of throw the viewer off, and that was one of the things that I thought might be something they were doing there.
And then we cut to Rey, and Rey's going to that cave where those books are, where the Journal of the Whills and all of that. And she's training with a lightsaber with Luke watching over. He's clearly training her in these segments. And over these shots, Rey is saying something inside me has always been there, but now it's awake and I need help. And then we cut to Rey, and she's got her hand on the ground like we saw in the teaser trailer. And then the rocks, were rising. But then the ground just splits. And you get Luke's face, and he is absolutely horrified. He's terrified by what he saw. Yeah. I mean, clearly that she's, extremely powerful. Yeah. And so Luke then starts his monologue of, I've seen this raw strength once before. It didn't scare me enough then. And and that brings up a lot of questions: is who is he talking about? Yeah. But during him talking here, it cuts to a fallen down, burning building with Luke's robotic hand coming out of the debris, and it's obviously showing then Luke beside R2-D2 in the flashback that we saw in The Force Awakens, and he's in front of course, the burning Jedi temple that we believe Kylo Ren probably destroyed. And so we're being led, again, I think misdirected possibly, to believe that he's talking about the raw power that he saw in Kylo. Yeah. But there's a lot of folks out there who think that, again, this is misdirection, that he's actually talking about anybody from Darth Vader to the Emperor to even Rey as a little girl. So we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of speculation out there. Yeah. I tend to believe that he probably is talking about Kylo in this one.
Yeah. For me, I think he's talking about Kylo in this one. And one of the things I'm wondering here is it's pretty apparent that Rey probably didn't know she had this kind of power at the time, which makes me wonder if Kylo has something similar and didn't know he had that kind of power either.
Potentially, yeah, I see that.
What if he brought down that temple and it wasn't on purpose? Like, what if he brought it down and it was on accident? And then just kind of was like, all right, I need to get out of here kind of now. And
that's really interesting because, we even saw Luke in Return of the Jedi, for example, where, he was clearly flirting with the dark side a little bit. Yeah. And maybe Kylo was doing that as well, and it basically led him to do that by accident. Right. I can certainly see that being a possibility. I had not considered that.
Yeah, so something to think about.
Yeah. So we then cut to Kylo smashing his helmet. Of course, we saw the smashed helmet in the teaser trailer. And we also see that he's got some really kind of cool space bandage on his face where he got cut in The Force Awakens. And it's really interesting because you can see the progression of time over the trailer because the bandage and the scar gets smaller as the trailer goes on. Yeah. We then see him flying his starship in a space battle with a cruiser Raddus. And we see scenes of Kylo. He's targeting the bridge of the Raddus, along with cutting back and forth with Leia on the bridge of a ship, probably the Raddus, because that's her flagship. Yeah. And it keeps cutting back and forth. We're led to believe, based on what I'm seeing, that they're sensing each other. Yeah. And then it shows Kylo preparing to push the button after he's targeted the cruiser, the bridge, but it never shows it actually, pushing the button. Right. That was a pretty emotional part of the trailer. That was,
I'm curious of the outcome of that.
Well, especially considering what he was saying overall. He was saying, let the past die. Kill it if you have to. That's the only way you're to become what you were meant to be. Yeah. Now, I believe that he's saying those words to Rey in the movie. Of course, it doesn't give us any indication of that in the trailer, but that's my call. I believe that he and Rey, and we'll get into that in a bit, but I believe that he says these words to Rey in the movie. Yeah. And we should come back and listen to this after we see the movie to see how wrong or right we were.
Yeah.
So then we have the Falcon flying through this cool crystal cave. It looks like it could be Crate, but it could also be Octu. Really cool shots. And Chewie's roaring, and then we get the Porg.
Yeah, that was a highlight.
It was. I've got to say, the Porg, I was skeptical at first, but, if they do it right, I don't know, we'll see. So the Porg gave a little roar of his own. It was kind of cute. My kids loved it, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what they're there for.
I loved it. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, that's what they're there for. So then we see Poe in his X-wing, I can't even say X-wing, lighting his extra booster engine that we've heard about. And then we see Finn in a First Order uniform, and he's fighting Phasma.
Yeah, this fight looks like it's going to be really fun.
Epic.
Everything's falling down in the background. Everything is on fire,
Yep.
and it looks great.
Yep. And it says Phasma's using the staff like we hear her wield in the book, Phasma.
Yeah.
And the coolest thing is, of course, Finn's got the what is it?
Yeah.
The
baton.
Z6 riot control baton
Yeah.
that FN 2199 used against him in Force
So
Awakens.
great.
Yeah. So then we get to overall of these scenes. We're getting Poe saying, "We are the spark that will light the fire that will burn the First Order down." That was a really cool statement. We then see more of Crate with Leia in front of a huge door on the planet, and the huge doors reminded me much of Hoth.
You know what it reminded me of? So we see the ice crystal foxes like running in there. First, it looks like they might actually be working with the rebellion somehow, because it looks like they're retreating into this area as like this door is like coming down or something to me.
Yeah, they're definitely heading towards the door. Absolutely.
Right. But the other thing is, this reminds me so much of, I don't know, episode 3 or 4, into Rebels season 1. Where they're on the planet and they're not Loth cats, but they're those really giant, dark-looking Loth cats.
Yeah.
So, and it is a very similar situation where they're in this like abandoned hangar, and the cats can't come out into the light, and they've got to stay in the dark, so they're like back in the hangar. And the way that was shot reminds me so much of that episode.
I hadn't considered that. Huh. So then we. Oh, goodness, where was I? Oh, yeah, of course, you mentioned the ice crystal foxes, and those things look really cool. It's going to be interesting to see how they play. We get Rey diving into the water and then coming out again with Luke watching her, probably more training, I imagine. And then Finn is walking with some stormtroopers while he's wearing his First Order uniform. And then we get more of the Battle of Crate with an X-wing exploding around those Crate speeder-looking things.
Yeah.
And then overall of this, Luke is saying, this is not going to go the way you think. And I wonder if this made me think of The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke is saying, I've got to go help my friends.
Gotta help my friends.
And Yoda's saying, no, you haven't completed your training. And it makes me think that she senses that Finn and Rose and Poe, that they may be in trouble, so she thinks she needs to go. And he's saying, hey, trust me, woman, I know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to go the way you think. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And then,
very possible. I just wanted to agree with that statement.
Yeah.
It's very good thinking. It's exactly what I was thinking as well. Yeah. He's been in this situation.
He knows what he's talking
seeing
about.
Exactly what he was doing when he was younger and wants to try and stop her from making that mistake.
Yep. We then get Snoke saying, fulfill your destiny. And this was one of the coolest shots in the whole trailer, because Snoke is using the Force to suspend Rey in the air and almost like bending her back over her back. And it's clearly some sort of Force torture.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of what Kylo did to Rey in the woods on Takadano. And except to a much stronger
degree,
extent.
right? So obviously he's clearly learning from Snoke. It reminded me of the Cruciatus curse in Harry Potter, the torture curse in Harry Potter. But we also get a really close up shot of Snoke's face.
Yeah,
man, it was creepy. It was. He looks great. They did a great job.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah. And then we cut to Rey, and Rey is speaking the words, "I need someone to show me my place in all of this." It then cuts to Kylo. And this is much later in the film, because you can tell by the scar on his face. And Kylo offers her his hand. And, I'm thinking that this is misdirection. It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Kylo, in the background of Kylo, there are some flames falling, some burning stuff falling.
We don't see that on
behind her,
side.
There's not.
Yeah.
But
that could happen in a situation.
It could. There could be a building behind him that's burning down that she's facing.
Originally, I was like, "Oh, that's complete misdirection. That's not actually what we're seeing is an interaction between these two." Right. I'm not so sure about that. The more I think about it now,
but you know what this reminded me of? What was the call that I made a couple months ago? That in the trailer, the trailer that we saw, where her and Kylo both were training to fight multiple people.
Yeah.
That they were fighting the Knights of Ren.
Yeah.
If they team up and they have to fight against the Knights of Ren, it fits with what I was saying.
That's true.
So I'm still kind of leaning towards that.
Yeah.
But is this misdirection? I can't imagine.
I think everything leading up to this maybe might be like misdirection, and then this is actually like truth.
But I can't imagine that Star Wars, that Disney, that Lucasfilms would reveal something like that.
Yeah,
in a trailer.
be so bold.
I just can't imagine that they would. So clearly it's got to be misdirection, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And they know people look for misdirection a lot these days, right?
Of course. I just can't believe that they would reveal that.
Maybe now they just like pull like a double reverse on us or something.
I don't know. We'll see.
Tatooine Times. Here's the latest news you need to know from the Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more.
Timothy Zahn's writing a sequel to Thrawn, and I know someone to my right who is super excited about that.
I can't wait. I love. You haven't read the first one yet.
I have not read the
Did you read some of the old Thrawn stuff back in the day?
No, I never read EU stuff.
Oh man,
I was never a novel person really until the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's in my top 3 Star Wars writers, and his Thrawn character is one of the best ever. Yeah, I can't wait.
I'll borrow the first one from you because I got to get that one done.
Well, yeah, but you need to borrow Leia too. Oh God, there's so many good ones.
So this is from The Verge. At Lucasfilm's publishing panel at New York City Comic-Con today, Timothy Zahn announced that he will be writing a sequel to this year's Star Wars Rebels tie-in novel, Thrawn. Zahn didn't reveal much about the book. It has a working title of Thrawn: Alliances, and it will feature another iconic Star Wars villain, Darth Vader.
Yes.
The book will presumably pick up where Thrawn left off, with the character now a Grand Admiral and his loyal assistant headed off into the depths of unknown space on a secret mission. According to Del Rey, the novel will hit stores in the summer of next year. Thrawn became a fan favorite character when Zahn introduced him in his 1991 novel Heir to the Empire. Earlier this year, he told Verge that Thrawn has endured because he was so different from any other villain we'd seen in Star Wars to that time, using strategy and tactics over brute force. While Lucasfilm rendered the Star Wars expanded universe non-canon in the lead-up to The Force Awakens, Star Wars Rebels executive producer reintroduced him in the show, and Zahn returned to write his origin story. The novel was left on an open-ended note, leaving open the possibility for a sequel novel.
And the cool thing about this is it's coming out relatively quickly. I mean, next summer, just within a few months from now, which is really cool.
Right after Han.
Yeah, right. One of the cool things about this is, of course, the first Thrawn left with, what's his name, heading off into the unknown space. And that's where we believe Snoke came from, because in the Aftermath series, they talked about this force in the unknown space. I'm wondering if somehow that's going to tie in, that maybe this is going to be where we first start seeing, Snoke being involved somehow. It's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But, if you guys haven't picked up the original Thrawn, do it. It's such a good book.
So Star Wars 8, The Last Jedi runtime confirmed. This is express.co.uk with just 3 months to until Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi is released. Excitement among fans couldn't be higher. Aside from speculation surrounding the new movie's plot, another aspect to consider is just how long The Last Jedi will be. Its predecessor, Episode 7, The Force Awakens, came in at 135 minutes, but will it be longer? Star Wars theorist Mike Zero has managed to spot the new Star Wars movie's runtime on Cineworld's website at 2 hours and 30 minutes.
I was hoping for 4 hours, but whatever.
The Star Wars sequel is also longer than both other middle movies in the prequel and original trilogies. The Last Jedi is 8 minutes longer than Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and 26 minutes more than Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back. In his new YouTube video, Zero commented, "It's needed. A lot of new characters are coming into this film. You've got DJ, Vice Admiral Holdo, Rose." The Star Wars theorist added, "Also, there's going to be a lot of shocking revelations in this film alongside the main battle at the very end of this movie between Luke Skywalker, Kylo Ren, and Rey, which is going to be very epic." So... yeah, if they get much longer, they really need to put intermissions in.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I don't disagree, but I think that if there's going to be a series of movies that can get away with that, it's going to be something like this.
Yeah, I agree.
There's only certain movies that I think can get away with it. I think Star Wars possibly could. 2.5 hours, that to me is perfect. I mean, I would beg for more if they could give it to us, but I think that's a great length. Yeah. But you mentioned DJ in here, and I noticed that this isn't in our show notes. There's going to be a DJ comic coming out as well.
Yes.
So keep on the lookout for that as well. The DJ comic is probably going to tell a lot more about his backstory.
Yeah. So Solo, A Star Wars Story is the name of the upcoming Han Solo movie. Also from The Verge, up to this point, we've been forced to call Disney's next standalone Star Wars film the cumbersome, as of yet untitled Han Solo film.
He who shall not be named.
Yeah. Well, no longer. Today, director Ron Howard announced that the film had finally wrapped production and that it would be simply called Solo, A Star Wars Story. There have been rumors for a couple months. After making Star Wars got their hands on a picture of a crew t-shirt, the production's working title was Red Cup, which now makes sense given that the real-world Solo company produces, well, Red Cups.
That's perfect.
The movie is said to follow the early days of Han Solo, well before he met up with Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and a pair of droids in A New Hope. We don't know much about what that story will entail, although Howard has alluded to locations like Corellia, Solo's home planet, and Kessel, where he made the infamous Kessel Run. The film will also include Tag and Bink, a pair of characters familiar to hardcore fans of the Star Wars comics.
That's a really
that was
really
very
cool tie-in.
surprising to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Well, that's interesting that they're being made canon now.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
those were cute stories.
Right,
It was
right.
really funny stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that.
Yep. The film follows.
The question I have though, did that come from the directors before him, or was that Ron Howard's idea? Since they were in the picture with Ron Howard and he was going back to do cuts or reshoots,
Yeah.
I don't know, makes you wonder.
Yeah, I'm just curious to kind of see like what they do, or if they just named a couple of guys and they're just guys walking in the background. And that's, I mean, because technically that's all they were in all of the other movies, right? That caused so much stuff. And anyways, the film follows the mold of 2016's Rogue One in that it's a standalone installment of the franchise that tells a self-contained story rather than tying directly into the larger Skywalker saga. Unlike its predecessor, however, Solo is all about a group of characters who audiences are already well familiar with. Solo, A Star Wars Story will hit theaters on May 25th, 2018.
And there hasn't been any talk of extending that deadline, so I think that they're going to be solid on that.
How exciting is that, man? By the time the holidays are all said and done, we're going to be like, we're only like 4.5 months away from you.
That's crazy.
EA shutting down Visceral Games, overhauling Star Wars game. So this is from Polygon.com. Electronic Arts is shutting down its Visceral Games studio and making major changes to the team's in-development Star Wars project, EA Executive Vice President Patrick Soderlund announced today. Visceral has been working on an action-adventure game set in the Star Wars universe in some form since 2013, when EA and Disney announced a multi-year game deal. It's been described as a story-based linear adventure in the style of Naughty Dog's Uncharted series, but based on comments from Soderlund, EA is making a significant change to that title. Throughout the development process, we've been testing the game concept with players, listening to the feedback about what and how they want to play, and closely tracking fundamental shifts in the marketplace, Soderlund said. It has become clear that to deliver an experience that players will want to come back to and enjoy for a long time to come, we needed to pivot the design. We will maintain the stunning visuals, authenticity in the Star Wars universe, and focus on bringing a Star Wars story to life. Importantly, we are shifting the game to a broader experience that allows for more variety and player agency, leaning into the capabilities of our Frostbite engine and reimagining central elements of the game to give players a Star Wars adventure of greater depth and breadth to explore.
It sounds like to me that the game wasn't anywhere near, having a whole lot going on with it. So this is probably not a terrible thing.
Well, they've been working on this thing for years, right? I mean, so I think, and in fact, I think it's in the rest of this article. As part of that pivot, EA's delaying the game. It was originally slated to launch late in EA's 2019 fiscal year.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that close.
Which runs from April 2018 through March 2019. But it has been pushed back indefinitely. The change in Visceral's Star Wars project will have an even bigger impact on the people working at the studio. EA is closing Visceral Games, and other EA studios will take over development of the Star Wars title.
I wonder if it'll be DICE. Because they've done Battlefront 2, they did Battlefront 1. Now, they do tend to focus on first-person shooters. Right. However, they've got several games that have campaign modes in them. So
it does make you wonder if they really liked what they saw with DICE and they didn't like the direction this was going. So they,
of course, EA's been working with DICE for, a decade or so with Battlefield games.
So a development team from across EA Worldwide Studios will take over development of this game, led by a team from EA Vancouver that's already been working on the project. Soderlund said, "Our Visceral studio will be ramping down and closing, and we're in the midst of shifting as many of the team as possible to other projects and teams at EA." Since announcing the Visceral was one of the internal studios working on a Star Wars game, EA's offered little in the way of detail about the project. EA and Visceral announced that former Naughty Dog creative director Amy Hennig was working on the title, co-writing the Star Wars adventure with Todd Stashwick. EA showed only a brief glimpse of the game at E3 2016. EA's next Star Wars title hits in November. DICE's Star Wars Battlefront 2 is in development for PS4, PC, Xbox One. Titanfall developer Respawn's also working on a Star Wars game for EA. Visceral Games was founded as EA Redwood Shores in 1998. The studio changed its name in 2009, was best known for its work on Dead Space and Battlefield Hardline. And when asked about Amy Hennig's future, EA representative for the company told Polygon we're in discussions with Amy about her next move.
Wow.
So, yeah. So stay tuned for that, and hopefully we kind of get some more news on that.
The HoloNet, your news source for current real-world news with a libertarian Star Wars twist.
Governments turn tables by suing public records requesters. This is from apnews.com. An Oregon parent wanted details about school employees getting paid to stay home. A retired educator sought data about student performance in Louisiana. And college journalists in Kentucky requested documents about the investigations of employees accused of sexual misconduct. Instead, they got something else, sued by the agencies they had asked for public records.
Wow.
Government bodies are increasingly turning the tables on citizens who seek public records that might be embarrassing or legally sensitive. Instead of granting or denying their requests, a growing number of school districts, municipalities, and state agencies have filed lawsuits against people making the request. Taxpayers, government watchdogs, and journalists who must then pursue the records in court at their own expense. The lawsuits generally ask judges to rule that the records being sought do not have to be divulged. They name the requesters as defendants but do not seek damage awards. Still, the recent trend has alarmed freedom of information advocates who say it's becoming a new way for governments to hide information, delay disclosure, and intimidate critics. This practice essentially says to a records requester, file a request at your peril, said University of Kansas journalism professor Jonathan Peters, who wrote about the issue for the Columbia Journalism Review in 2015 before several more cases were filed. These lawsuits are an absurd practice and noxious to open government.
Yeah, I'll say.
Government officials who have employed the tactic insist they are acting in good faith. They say it's best to have courts determine whether records should be released when legal obligations are unclear. For instance, when the documents may be shielded by an exemption or privacy laws. At least 2 recent cases have succeeded in blocking information, while many others have only delayed the release.
So what's the point of even having a freedom of information?
I know.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, state freedom of information laws generally allow requesters who believe they are wrongly denied records to file lawsuits seeking to force their release. If they succeed, government agencies can be ordered to pay their legal fees and court costs. Suing the requesters flips the script. So even if agencies are ultimately required to make the records public, they typically will not have to pay the other side's legal bills.
Well, I don't know why they care anyway, because it's just taxpayer money. They don't care. It's not their money.
Yeah. You can lose even when you win, said Mike DeShodels, an education watchdog who was sued by Louisiana Department of Education after filing requests for school districts' enrollment data last year. I'm stuck with my legal fees just for defending my right to try to get these records.
Yeah, we don't have any right to these records. I mean, give me a break. I mean, the government absolutely is not going to say that we have a right to these records.
No.
They're going to do everything that they can to stop anything that could embarrass them, make them look bad, anything like that.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, then that tells you right there that we have zero right to be able to look and see what our government's doing.
Yeah, I mean, they're doing their best to protect you, right?
Yeah,
Not themselves. So is there any chance that judges will eventually see like the frivolity of the government's claims and just start tossing some of these cases out?
No, of course not, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about the judge who works for the government, who is the same government that these records. I mean, no, of course not. They investigated themselves and found they did nothing wrong. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So either way, taxpayers are on the hook for having paid their government to create laws allowing information requests, and are now paying government to sue in court against people who are trying to use the laws they created.
Right.
It's so stupid.
It's absolutely. I mean, that is what government does. That is government in one sentence. You just nailed what government is. Beautiful.
I feel like this is a kind of thing senators were dealing with once it became like the empire.
Oh, sure.
Like when that shift happened and they were there just for show. Right. So like these guys are there, and like some were like, oh, we can do these requests, and then they get these files, and like it's the files where you get them, and it's nothing but everything's blacked out. It's just paragraphs of black.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Leia in the Leia book, the Leia novel, was a junior some sort of a junior senator, junior ambassador. It was more like she was a student,
right,
trying to learn government. But anyway, but they did get some tasks from the official Senate, and it was all basically make work, and it kind of gives you the same kind of feel. So definitely check that part of the book out. It was really good stuff.
Nice. Yeah, and so obviously, these intergalactic judges would be Empire stooges, right? And be doing the same thing our judges here would be doing.
They would be boss. Be the same thing.
Yeah. So prosecutors say McDonald's employee tried to flush newborn down toilet at work. This is from WMUR. McDonald's employee in Redwood City, California, was charged with attempted murder after she was arrested on suspicion of trying to flush her newborn baby down a toilet at the fast food restaurant, prosecutors say Wednesday. Sarah Lochner, 25, who was jailed on $11 million bail, was also charged with 1 count of assault on a child becoming comatose or paralyzed and an enhancement stemming from the victim being under 5 years old. San Mateo County District Attorney Steve Wagstaff said the baby was delivered on Labor Day in the bathroom of a McDonald's at 185 Chestnut Street. It's a real sad story, Wagstaff said. She said she didn't know she was pregnant. Lochner gave birth while working the 5 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. shift at the restaurant. According to prosecutors, she went to the restroom several times due to stomach pain before a coworker checked on her and reportedly saw blood on the floor in a restroom stall. The suspect told the coworker she just had a heavy period, but prosecutors said another colleague looked into the stall and saw a newborn baby face down in the toilet bowl with Lochner's head on the child's back. Then the coworker heard the sound of the toilet flushing. Lochner asked the witness not to call police, prosecutors said. But police were called to the restaurant, and upon arrival, the newborn baby boy had no pulse and was not breathing. He was rushed to a hospital and put into a medically induced coma, officials said. The infant survived, but prosecutors said his neurological prognosis is unknown. Lochner will appear in court on September 18th to enter a plea. She's in custody at Maple Street Correction Center in Redwood City. Not okay to kill people.
No.
Especially defenseless little babies that you just gave birth to.
Yeah, I mean, that's
a mom.
That's just that's disgusting to me. Of course, the first image that pops in my head is, my kids. Yeah. My wife and I went to see It the other day. One of my favorite books ever.
How was that? I haven't seen that yet.
And it was really, really good. Yeah. They tried to be cheeky with some jump scares, which I don't think that material needs that because the material is so terrifying anyway.
Yeah.
It was the first visual medium to really take on the very beginning death of Georgie, in a really horrifying way. And watching that, it was like he was not much younger than my youngest kid, and they did it in such a way that was really, really gory and really graphic. But they had to do that because it sets the tone for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
But it just it just makes you realize that those are your kids. How do you do that to any human being, much less your own kid?
Right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. Also, I couldn't help but think how stupid this woman must be on multiple accounts, right? So, like, if she's trying to flush, like, what are you doing trying to flush the baby? Like, you got to know the baby it doesn't fit down there, right?
Has she never seen a plumbing pipe before? I mean, what in the world?
Right. And then, like, on top of that, like, why would you flush the water, right? Like, if you're not trying to flush the kid away, you're trying to drown it, right? But if you're flushing the water's now...
Right. I mean, she obviously clearly is not very smart.
And I guess that's why she's employed at McDonald's.
Well, and probably why she, got knocked up. I mean, there's ways to stop that these days.
Not to make fun of people that are employed at McDonald's.
Right, or not to make fun of people who got knocked up, like my wife and I did. When we didn't mean to.
So, yeah, I looked all over to try to find some kind of fundraising for this child. I couldn't find anything. I'm guessing the hospital's voluntarily footing the bill on this one.
I'm sure. And the kid will be probably a ward of the state. I mean, the state will this kid will be in, hopefully somebody will step up and adopt this child, but who knows?
Yeah, and we're all paying for this girl's mistake now, including the baby, which is a real shame. Yep. As far as comments for Star Wars, I don't really got much. I do have a thought comes to mind about the Blue Harvest episode and the trash scene where they're like hiding on the side of the ship and like the little, but I don't know.
Oh,
I'll leave that to your mind.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Chicago's soda tax fizzled after 2 months. I see what you did there, Daily Herald.
And anybody who knows anything about economics is not surprised.
Yeah. What does it mean for the anti-soda movement? Yeah, so Daily Herald came out with this. Less than 2 months after the country's largest soda tax went into effect, embattled lawmakers in Cook County are already poised to repeal it. The tax has been plagued in its very short life by legal challenges, implementation glitches, and a screeching multi-million-dollar media battle between the soda industry and public health groups. On Tuesday, in recognition of growing public pressure, Cook County's Board of Commissioners is expected to vote to roll back the tax, effective as soon as December 1st. It's a major victory for Big Soda, which has spent millions on ad buys, lobbyists, and political contributions in the county. It's also the second blow this year to the soda tax movement, which suffered a defeat in Santa Fe in early May. Advocates of that movement, which include a number of top public health groups, said, and former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg had advanced the taxes as a means to fight obesity. Yeah, who are we kidding here?
Right.
While also raising revenue for local jurisdiction. But critics say the collapse of the Cook County tax is proof the national soda tax movement is losing its momentum. Consumer outrage is off the charts, said David Goldenberg, a spokesman for the industry-funded Can the Tax Coalition. People know this tax is all about raising revenue to fuel more county spending, and they resent the idea of a billionaire from New York coming in and telling them what they should do here in Cook County.
Yep, that's exactly it.
Unlike other cities and counties that have passed soda taxes in recent years, Cook County was arguably cursed from the start. The county of 5.2 million people was already contending with budgetary woes and widespread voter frustration with state and local government when the board voted in November 2016 to levy a 1 cent per ounce tax on soda and other sugary drinks. The measure was pitched largely as a means to plug a $1.8 billion budget gap and secondarily as a means to improve public health by discouraging. Let me reread that. And secondarily as a means to improve public health by discouraging the consumption of beverages linked to obesity and other conditions. But there were early signs that the soda tax might not raise the revenue advocates hoped, and certainly not on the intended schedule. The policy's rollout was dogged by implementation errors and legal challenges.
Of course, it was a government program.
An early version of the tax, for instance, was aimed at distributors who would then pass the cost on to consumers. But the county was forced to revise that plan when it realized that it would make the soda tax subject to an additional sales tax, which is illegal in Illinois. Shortly after that,
that's basically what a VAT tax is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shortly after that, the county proposed making the tax a line item at the point of sale, much like sales taxes are assessed currently. But local governments are not allowed to tax transactions that are paid for using federal nutrition benefits, which means Chicago had to exempt more than 870,000
Wow.
people from paying the tax. A last-minute change that dented revenue expectations.
Ouch.
Yeah, I guess so. When the tax finally did go into effect on August 2nd, following a lawsuit by the Illinois Retail Merchants Association, it was met with staunch public opposition. Consumers have organized highly visible boycotts, driving to nearby Indiana for groceries and flooding their representatives with complaints.
Sure.
Several
That's why everybody comes to New Hampshire for cheap booze.
yeah.
I mean, and fireworks,
Yeah,
and I mean,
several Cook County commissioners who switched their votes in favor of repeal have cited that outrage. Philadelphia's soda tax, in effect since January, has also failed to generate the revenue that backers initially expected. That has limited the reach of the pre-K program the tax was set to fund, and has empowered some of the policy's critics. And I'm going to go right into like a story. I'm from Southern New Jersey. I got a lot of family from Southern New Jersey. There's a lot of crossover from Southern New Jersey into Philadelphia.
Of course, yeah.
Anybody that's in Southern New Jersey, guess where they're not buying soda anymore?
right. They're definitely not buying into Jersey.
Or Philly, because that's where the tax is. Yeah.
Oh,
so
is it? Right.
it's in Philly,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So they're getting it all from like what if you're going to be somewhere regularly, if a city tries to implement this, what's to stop someone from just going to the next town over and getting it where they're not getting slammed with an additional tax?
Yep.
Stupid.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If I can save on blue milk, right, and by getting it from the guy in a different town, which one am I going to pick? pick, right?
Sure.
I want to save myself some money.
Of course.
And the whole thing is stupid.
Especially when you're on a border. You know, if you're on a border, and we used to see that.
Yep.
I lived on the border of Tennessee and Arkansas, and right across from Memphis, Tennessee. And we saw that all the time because our food taxes were much lower in West Memphis as opposed to Memphis.
Yeah.
So people would come across the bridge. Instead of going further into Memphis, they would come across the bridge to do their grocery shopping and save a ton of money on groceries.
Yep.
We saw that all the time.
Yeah. Black Detroit firefighters defend white recruit fired over watermelon.
Ooh.
So fox2detroit.com. Now, did you hear about the story originally?
I have not, no.
So this guy, he was literally just hired as like a firefighter at let's see, Engine 55, right? So he went there and he brought in a watermelon, okay, for everybody, you know? And it wasn't like, and it was not like any kind of like racial slight, but they took it as one, right?
Who is they?
Yeah, I don't know. There was somebody there apparently that didn't like it.
Of course,
that
there's always
didn't
somebody.
know him, right?
Wow.
So, anyways,
I mean, I'm a white guy. I love watermelon. Are
I know,
you serious?
it's really
I don't
good.
know how that turned into a racist thing. Same with fried chicken. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Because in the South, these are foods that everybody eats.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I don't get that.
I know it's perceived slights, right?
Yeah,
It's not not actually anything. So, a fired Detroit probationary firefighter is getting a big show of support. Robert Pattison was fired after bringing watermelon to his new post at Engine 55 at Joy and Southfield after some African-American firefighters there were offended. Now, a couple of guys he probably didn't know, right? Or a couple of guys didn't know him because he was just hired, right? Pattison, a 41-year-old from Fenton who is white, told Fox 2 by phone that it was not a joke. But Fire Commissioner Eric Jones officially discharged him afterwards. But Tuesday, a social media post by Tadaria Spearman stuck up for Pattison, including a group photo of him with other African-American fighters. Okay, and when they say other African-American fighters,
Firefighters.
African-American firefighters, all right, when they say other, all right, Pattison's the only freaking white guy in the photo. Like, literally every other person is black.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not just other. It's literally everybody there. And so the dude's clearly happy in the photo. But anyways, so this guy's sticking up for him, and he says, I just want to let everyone know he's a really amazing dude, and it was all good intentions, he wrote. And our entire class is supporting him in this, especially as African Americans, and that's all that needs to be said. Stay up, brother, or hashtag DFD, which I'm assuming stands for
Fire
Detroit.
Department,
Yeah. Last week, Jones released a statement on Fox 2 saying there was zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior inside the Detroit Fire Department.
Discriminatory behavior.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, I know. It sounds like his removal of this person was really the discriminatory behavior,
Right.
not the actual gift.
Yeah, because the question is, would he have fired a black guy if the black guy had walked in with a watermelon? Probably not.
Right. On Saturday, September 30th, 2017, at Engine 55, a trial firefighter, probationary employee, engaged in unsatisfactory work behavior, which was deemed offensive and racially insensitive to members of the Detroit Fire Department, Jones wrote. After a thorough investigation, I'm sorry it was real thorough, it was determined that the best course of action was to terminate the employee of this probationary employee. Of his employment. So
that's ridiculous.
So it seems like we have this recent spate of management types who are firing people either on how like a situation looks or just completely based on hearsay, right? So there was that guy, I can't remember this guy. So some guy was flying, I think he worked in like North Carolina, and he was going to this free speech event in Boston that happened a couple months back, and somebody put out there that this guy was like a racist or something like that, and his company fired him. And the guy was like not a racist. He's like, I don't even know where like this came from. There's like no proof of anything, and they fired this guy.
Well, I mean,
we live a lot of this kind of.
We live in a very sensitive time where we have a bunch of snowflakes on both sides, the left and the right. Are full of these snowflakes that are offended by literally everything. Yeah. They look for things to be offended by. They want to be perpetual victims, and they want to be seen that way. And I don't understand that for a second.
I don't live life like that.
I don't know. Forget it. I mean, I don't even notice when people are trying to offend me because I don't care. I really don't care what people think.
I'm so busy. I don't have the time.
Right.
So yeah, it looks like much calmer heads surrounded the man in question, like with the response, right? Yeah. So the guy that responded to the situation saying like, look, we're good with this guy. Like the photo they're talking about, right? So he looks like happy, like genuinely happy. Everybody in this photo is like smiles, like it's like a group of guys hanging out or whatever, right? there's clearly no issues here. And I bet they didn't talk to this guy very much at all, and they were their decision was made before they even met with him. I guarantee
it was, of course, because in this day and age, that leads to a lawsuit. If you don't act quickly on something like that, because somebody's offended, then it's going to lead to a lawsuit. Now, in a corporate environment, that could cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for the company. So I guess I can't really be upset when a company does that. But when you're dealing with a public service like that, I mean, it's taxpayer money.
Right.
They don't care normally. I don't. It doesn't make sense to me.
And the other thing, I can't help but wonder if his presentation of the gift was part of the problem. So I saw a photo, not here with this article, but with the original. No. So the original article, which I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago when I saw it. It was literally just the watermelon with a bow on it. So
a bow?
A bow.
Oh, a bow.
Yeah, with the bow. So I'm like, all right. So did they just not like that it was sitting there? Like, my impression is, if it was on a tray neatly sliced up, like, would that have been an issue, or would that have been
Or again, would these African American firefighters have been upset if it had been one of their black brothers who had brought it in?
Right.
You know, if it had been one of the black guys.
Yeah.
Would they have been as upset then? That tells me that they're the ones who have the race issue, not the guy who brought in the watermelon.
Someone does.
I mean, that's a huge problem.
I don't know that we really have a perceived racism problem in the Star Wars universe, but I think if there was one, it would actually be much more prevalent in the Rebel forces than the Empire, right? Because the Empire is pretty clear on where they stand.
Yeah, they're not. They don't perceive race. I mean, of course, you haven't read the Thrawn book, but when he first is put into the Imperial officer training, he gets a lot of pushback because he's not a white guy.
Yeah,
and he gets a lot of pushback. And it's more not really racist; it's more speciest.
Yeah,
I think that I don't think they see color. I think white and black humans are treated the same. I think it's just different species.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets a lot of crap until he basically proves himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really good stuff in there, and it really kind of shows, because we've heard bits and pieces about that. You know, they enslaved Wookiees, they didn't like, but to actually see it in the book and have it portrayed really well, it was well
so done. I think any perceived slights, that would be like in the rebellion side, right? Like, oh, so and so gave me this, you know, and obviously our people like this.
He's got 3 hands.
So I'm super excited for this article. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. Star Wars style police hover bikes will soon be on patrol.
No.
This is from NBCnews.com, right? The past week at the 37th annual GITEX, I guess, Technology Week, officials announced that Dubai police officers will soon be racing over traffic jams on hover bikes called HoverSurf Scorpions.
No way.
Developed by Russian drone manufacturer HoverSurf.
So they're going to be manned.
Yep. So the Dubai police force announced that officers will soon be speeding around the city skies on electric police hover bikes. The Star Wars style battery-powered hover bikes can fly at a height of 5 meters and reach speeds of up to 43.5 miles per hour.
I'm looking at pictures of this. It looks like a manned drone, like one of the drones with 4 rotors, but it looks got a man on it. That is so cool.
The bike was co-developed for emergency response teams with Russian drone manufacturer HoverSurf and is called the HoverSurf Scorpion. First Sergeant Ali Ahmad Mohammed told Gulf News the Scorpion can take an officer over heavy traffic and emergencies. The bike can also fly without a passenger and can go up to 6 kilometers, he said. It can fly for 25 minutes and carry up to 661 pounds of weight at a speed of 70 kilometers per hour.
Man, if it could go further than that, I would totally get one to commute to work. That is awesome.
Well, they'll get there, right? I mean, this is just the start, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's so exciting.
Yeah.
So Alexander Adamanoff, CEO of HoverSurf, took to Facebook to confirm that the company and the Dubai police have agreed to mass produce the Scorpion in the Dubai area. He also posted the above video of the police hoverbike in action. This product brought to you by capitalism.
Right. Right.
So, and I make remarks in here about UAE and how they're far from doing things right in their country.
Oh yeah, they're very they're very strong-handed about certain things. Yeah, they bring in a lot.
Yeah, they bring in a lot of foreign labor. All right. Now, granted that this is volunteer foreign, knowing what they're getting into. Volunteers come from other countries because there is no work in there, so they're coming here to work, and they can be very slavish conditions depending on where they're at, right? But this is actually a Russian company that developed this. Yeah, so pretty interesting. These look a lot like they look a lot like the Canto Bite officer bikes that we've seen in the artist renderings. Yep. You know, a month or so ago we were talking about. So which oppressive agency, Roger, do you think that will try to regulate these things first? Will it be the FAA?
Well, if they only go 5 meters, I don't think the FAA can touch it.
Because they can only go so high, like,
Right.
to a certain height.
Right. I don't think the FAA can, but there'll be some.
Yeah, somebody's going to try.
Of course. There will be some government body that's going to touch that.
Yeah.
No question. Yeah, it'll definitely be regulated by somebody.
Yeah.
Probably regulated out of existence.
Which Star Wars canon character will we dissect in this episode of Galaxy's Smallest Political Quiz?
So, Brian, who did you pick this week for the Galaxy's Smallest Political Quiz?
One of your favorite characters, Padme Amidala Naberry.
Good choice.
Yep. Commonly known as Padme Amidala, she was a human female politician, became a leading voice for peace and diplomacy during the final years of the Galactic Republic, rising to galactic prominence after the Trade Federation invaded and occupied our homeworld of Naboo. She emerged as a leading member of the Galactic Senate during the Clone Wars through her furtive relationship and marriage to Jedi Anakin Skywalker. She was the mother of the legendary Jedi Master Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia Organa of Alderaan, the later of whom followed in her footsteps as a champion for the democratic ideals of the Republic.
Yeah, this one's going to be fun to dig into. Another former politician. So that'll be government. The first question. Now, as you guys know, we break this down into 10 questions, personal questions and economic issues. And the first one is government should not censor speech, press, media, or the HoloNet.
And I went agree here. She's one of the most outspoken people in the prequels, and with such a mind towards liberty, it would be against her character to be against free speech.
I think I agree with you on this because, you know, when the blockade was happening in the first movie, obviously they couldn't transmit any information in and out of Naboo. That was an issue for them. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on this one. Service should be voluntary. The Jedi policy on the warding of children who are force-sensitive and the conscription of soldiers by the Empire is immoral.
I went agreed with this, and any questions about this would have been answered after her meeting and becoming friends with Anakin.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. The next question, there should be no laws regarding possession of weapons for personal use.
I went agreed here. She routinely carries a weapon with her throughout her involvement in the Star Wars saga and at no time calls for a disarmament of any others. She was also against the Military Creation Act, giving a strong impression that she would have been in favor of the right to self-defense.
Right. And not to mention the fact, I mean, she had one in her throne even, hidden in her throne. Yeah. I mean, she had guns everywhere. So, yeah, she was definitely a pro-gun girl. Let's see. Repeal laws prohibiting adult possession and use of drugs.
Yeah, so here I went maybe. Throughout the saga, there were many attempts on Padme's life and multiple attempts where she either was poisoned or almost poisoned. While she seems liberty-oriented and still works from a position of power, I can see her possibly opposing an action that would legalize something she didn't like. That's kind of why I leaned maybe on that one.
Well, you know, she was, as a lot of politicians are, a do-gooder. She wanted to do good for people. And, you know, some people think that the best thing to do for people is to, you know, say that they're going to use force against someone if they do something that might hurt them. Right. So, yeah, I can't disagree with you on this one. But this leaves her with a personal score of 90, which is actually pretty...
Yeah. Are we done?
I'm sorry, I'm skipping one, yeah. There should be no requirement to register as a force-sensitive with the Galactic Empire.
This one's easy agreed, especially given who her husband was.
Yeah. Yes, of course. So that gives her a personal issue score of 90, which is actually pretty high for one of our politicians that we've done, like Bail Organa and others. Moving on to economic issues, end imperial alliances with corporations and banking cartels. Corporatism is picking winners and losers in the marketplace.
Yeah, agreed. This view likely would have been solidified, I think, during the Trade Federation's fiasco.
Absolutely, because that was nothing but corporatism. So, absolutely. End government barriers to intergalactic free trade.
I said agree on this one. It's likely she held this position before the Trade Federation invasion, but that probably just strengthened her position at that point.
Sure. Yeah. Science and technological advancements should not be controlled or regulated by the Empire.
Yeah, so I want to agree here. We've seen multiple examples from Episode 1 on diversionary techniques used by Amidala and her advisors and protectors.
Right.
One of those was the use of holograms, where they're coming down the hallway there. A combination of wanting to stay a leg up on the competition, whether trade or military, and hear outspoken views on liberty, or her outspoken views on liberty. I can't really see this being any other answer than agree.
I can't disagree with you there either. The career path of individuals in the planetary division of labor should not be dictated by the Empire.
I have agree here. I don't have any specific examples, but kind of the tally of her stances and statements she's made are too strong to support something like this.
Okay. And taxation is theft, including sovereign planetary funds taken by the Empire as tribute.
And I put maybe here. Amidala's royalty. Someone's paying for the monarchy. For what it's worth, it's an elected monarchy. That's elected position, but somebody's got to pay for that. Right?
Sure. I mean, our U.S. senators are elected, and they still get a tax-funded paycheck.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that she was on the tax dole. She was getting her payment from taxes without a doubt.
Yeah.
So that leaves her with an economic score of 90 as well. So that puts her pretty squarely in the libertarian quadrant as far as those scores. But we have our bonus question. The bonus question is always, did this customer ever initiate force in Star Wars universe canon?
Yeah, and so basically, Amidala's anti-war stance is extremely strong and backed up with many statements. I've got one here from StarWars.com website, and I'm actually dropping the link here in this section. She says, "Wake up, senators, you must wake up. If we offer the separatists violence, they can only show us violence in return. Many will lose their lives, all will lose their freedom. This decision could very well destroy the very foundation of our great republic. I pray you do not let fear push you into a disastrous decision. Vote down this security measure, which is nothing less than a declaration of war. Does anyone here want that? I cannot believe they do." So this was, I believe, a deleted scene, I think, from there.
Interesting.
Oddly, the section that this is under was titled "A Pacifist's Unheeded Warning."
Padme was anything but a pacifist.
You didn't even let me get to the part.
Sorry.
I literally had typed after this in my notes, and Roger will be glad to point out why Padme is not a pacifist.
Well, I mean, look, that is a word that is thrown around so much that it even has confused my 9-year-old. My 9-year-old son told my wife and I a few months ago that he's a pacifist.
I remember this.
It's hard for me to even say the word. The word makes me so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, that he said he was a pacifist. And I said, well, do you know what that means? He said, it means that I won't hurt anybody. I said, but if somebody were trying to hurt you, would you stop them? Well, yeah. If somebody were trying to hurt, your mom or I, would you stop them? Well, of course I would. Then you're not a pacifist. And that really upset him because he thought he was a pacifist.
Yeah.
And that's a word that gets thrown around and used in the wrong circumstances way too much.
Yes.
Amidala was nowhere near a pacifist.
Definitely
She
not.
absolutely was willing to defend her life, defend the lives of her subjects, defend the life of Anakin. No question about it.
Yeah. And then there's also later, she's talking later on in episode 2 with Anakin, and they had this conversation, this heated debate about how people don't agree, and Anakin's thinking they should be made to. Remember, he's like, "Well, they
Right.
should be made to."
Right.
And
Who will make them? I will. Right.
Yeah, She questioned who's going to make them. She's clearly against the obvious use of force. At least in the most obvious and obscene ways. I think she's generally against the use of force.
Yeah, and unfortunately, she, like a vast majority of people, believe that democracy is not really force because people are voting and people are making those decisions for themselves. But it still is force because if I do something that the majority doesn't like, then force will be used against me, even if I don't hurt anybody else. Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the other ones. I don't remember who said that. That's an old saying. But that's really how it is. Democracy is still a form of government that requires a monopoly of violence over a given landmass. And it's still complete violence. Just ask we are the largest prison country in the world as far as per capita people in prison. Just ask them. Just ask the people that are, killed for smoking a joint, or kidnapped for smoking a joint.
Some of the drug offenses are really the worst when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean, any crime that somebody is doing that does not harm someone else is not a crime.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
Now, our laws may say otherwise, but morality doesn't.
Morality says no.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. So that was it for her. I don't have any examples of where she used force against someone unless her life was threatened or someone she loved in some manner.
Well, it's good to finally get a libertarian again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Resistance Review, your favorite Star Wars canon movies, TV shows, books, comics, and more, reviewed by our hosts.
So we're going to look at, we're actually going to be reviewing several things today. We, of course, lots of new material came out. Yep. We got the Luke Skywalker book coming out October 30th, 31st as well. So we'll be doing that on the next show. But on this show, we're going to be doing From a Certain Point of View. I really, really enjoyed this book. You know, it's a collection of 40 stories, and it's got stories on everybody from Yoda to the mouse droid on the Death Star.
I love that.
I mean, you know, and of course there's some great stories. There's some good stories, and there's a couple of not so good stories in it too. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be
when you tell 40
authors.
different short stories, you're bound to.
But the vast majority of them were either good or great. I mean, hands down, it was a fantastic read. All of the stories revolve around characters and events from A New Hope. And they're all told in order from the beginning of the film to the end. So the first chapter is from the very beginning of the movie and so on.
Kind of walks you through the movie just from a different point of view.
From different perspectives, yeah. So the book, it introduces you to the story of A New Hope through the eyes of Ramus Antilles, who was the captain of the Tantive 4, from the final moments of Rogue One to the time of his death by Darth Vader crushing him. Following the story is a series of clever tales that place the reader beneath the helmet of the stormtrooper that stunned Princess Leia. That was a really cool story. That was really neat. You get to read a story from you're under the mask of a Tusken Raider, the one that actually assaulted Luke Skywalker. You're behind the bulbous eyes of the Rhodian bounty hunter Greedo. There's actually several different stories that wrap around that whole period of Greedo and Han in the cantina. There's several stories that wrap around that. You get to hear about the band. You get to hear about Greedo. You get to hear about
Biff and
you get to hear about two other characters that were just random characters in there. And you get to hear about the bartender. What's his name?
His name is Wooher.
Yeah, Wooher. You get to hear about him, and you get to find out why he doesn't like droids. That was he was in the Clone Wars, and he lost some family in the Clone Wars, and so he hates droids, and that's why he doesn't like droids.
My friend Dan will be really excited about the Greedo story. He's a big Greedo fan.
One of the, from a personal perspective, one of the more touching stories for me was the one with Leia's parents, and it's Breha Organa, and she's on Alderaan waiting on Bail to get home, and she's worried about Leia because she knows what Leia was in the middle of and what she was doing. Then Bail gets home, and they talk about what's going on, and then they get a notification of the Death Star, pulled up beside the planet. That was really touching. It gives you more into Bail and Breha and more of kind of what's going on, what happened on Alderaan. We get a lot of that in the Leia novel, but it was interesting to keep on going with that as well. There's stories for Qui-Gon Jinn as a Force ghost. That was really cool. Him talking to Obi-Wan and Yoda and all these other people was really cool. Nice. R5D4, the droid of the bad motivator. It tells what happened with his motivator. Now, I really liked this one. Brian Sovereign, who does the Sovereign Tech podcast, he didn't care for that story.
Oh, interesting.
But I liked it. I thought it was, and of course they've changed the canon. The canon was different. There was a canon. There was an EU story, a legend story about how R5D4 actually blew his motivator.
Oh, okay.
But I actually liked this story. So. Brian Sovereign's not always right. There was a story about Aunt Beru. There was one about Admiral Mahdi in the Death Star. Dr. Afra, which was a nice tie-in for the comics. That was really cool. A Jawa. You get a perspective from the Imperial who didn't destroy the escape pod that had R2-D2 and C-3PO in it. And you even get Dianaga, or as you likely know her, the trash compactor monster. That was really cool, too. And apparently, she's Force sensitive.
Oh,
or she can at least feel the Force. I don't know if she can use it, but she can feel the Force.
And then maybe that's why she gravitated towards. Very interesting. Very interesting.
There's way too many details to go into for this book because there's just so many different stories and so many different new things and new perspectives. I recommend going to. There's actually a YouTube video out there called 50 Things We Learned from this book. A certain point of view is done by. I can't think of the guy's name. Star Wars Explained is the YouTube channel.
Okay.
I watch his stuff every day. He's a great YouTuber. Yep. But he does it's just 5 or 6 minutes long, but it really gives you lots of punchy details.
Yeah, I like that show as well. There's one note I don't see in here for this book that you had made a comment to me about, and maybe it's because it was one of the bad stories, but you said someone from the Life Day special was now canon.
Oh, right. So I can't remember her name. The bartender's helper, assistant, or whatever. Anyway, B. Arthur's character from the holiday special is now a canon character. That was a really cool tie-in too. That was really neat. Now, thankfully, her performance in the holiday special is not canon, but bringing her into the Star Wars canon was pretty cute. That was pretty neat.
Cool.
But anyway, you can help us out. If you're going to get this book, get it at resisttheempirepodcast.com/POV for point of view. And, that'll give us a couple of bucks to help out with the show, and you don't have to pay anything extra. So I definitely recommend picking this one up. I mean, come on, I'm going to recommend picking up just about any Star Wars book, but definitely pick this one up and help us out.
My buddy is not a novel reader at all, but I think something like this he would actually really enjoy, like little stories where you could just kind of pick up and read one.
Most of the stories are just a handful of pages.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, there were only just very few of the stories were of any length.
Yeah. So we got a couple more reviews here.
We do. Yeah. Rebels is back.
Season 4. Yep. Yeah. These were pretty awesome, and I think a little surprising for me, just kind of in the direction we started, I suppose. But they're kind of cleaning up some things, I think, before we really move on to some bigger things.
Yeah, and I think they need to. So I think that fits.
So we started off with episode 1, Heroes of Mandalore, part 1. So they're releasing these 2 episodes for the first 3
weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
Right.
Yep. So we got part 1 and 2 today. The episode starts off with Ezra, Kanan, Sabine, Fen Rao, and Mandalore forces attempting to break into a facility to rescue Sabine's father. Roger, conveniently placed trench by the writers, poor engineering by the Empire, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both, probably.
Ezra is wearing a jetpack and not doing well with it.
Yeah. But I think they probably could have left that out. I mean, I didn't think that they needed the comedic levity at that point.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a kid's show after all, but for me, it didn't really do it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't bother me, I guess, too much. I thought maybe it was a touch over the top, but he still handles some stormtroopers without too much issue. And an officer is speaking to Lord Saxon, okay?
Right.
Who we find out is Tiber Saxon, the younger brother of Gar Saxon, who was killed last season by not Sabine, but her mother Ursa, who actually shot him after she had turned around.
Because he was about to shoot Sabine.
Right. So... we see him via hologram, talking to this officer, and Saxon wants Sabine alive, but the officer is saying he's not even sure if they can hold the base. Saxon says that's why he's sending in reinforcements. In an obvious nod to the viewer, this was already planned out. He expected them to.
Yeah, it was definitely a trap. And some ATSTs get dropped off. Excuse me. Some ATSTs get dropped off. More fighting, of course, ensues. Sabine gets stunned, and after failing to take on the ATST, she gets stunned. They order Ezra to surrender, and then Clan Kreese, or is it Kreese?
Kreese.
Kreese.
Yeah, Kreese.
Comes into the rescue with more Mandalore fighters. They discover that Sabine's father isn't in the facility after all, and the masked Mandalore leader of Clan Kreese says that Sabine's mother received the intel that it was a setup, but she couldn't get the information to her in time. Sabine asks who this masked, Mandalorian is. She reveals herself to be none other than Bo-Katan. She too was betrayed by the Saxon clan when they threw in with the Empire. Bo-Katan was the sister of Satine, who was the girlfriend. I'm going to say girlfriend of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah,
she might as well have been.
And the ruler of she was the Duchess of Mandalore.
Right. Yeah. The Duchess comes back too.
Yeah. Yep. So Sabine tries to give Bo-Katan the black saber as she was regent after her sister died, but Bo-Katan turns it down and said she had her chance and failed. There's some heart-to-heart here with Ezra and Sabine. Ezra's kind of telling her it's her chance to try and rebuild Mandalore. Sabine's mother arrives with her brother and has news that the Empire is moving her father back to the capital for a public termination. They had already moved him out of the facility even before they had attacked. So now Kanan's talking to Hera via hologram, and now they're having a heart-to-heart moment after Hera expresses that she needs Kanan back there. And
that was really touching. I mean, it was clear there was clearly some emotion going on there, which is leading us to the fact that they're probably going to end up together. I'm more than certain.
They decide to ambush the convoy that's on the way to the capital.
Right. And then Ursa and Tristan Wren's forces, they've purposely altered the route of the convoy into a canyon area so that the rest of the forces can make an extraction attempt by sabotage of Ulrich Wren. We meet Ulrich at the threat of one of Saxon's men one of Saxon's men who we'll see a few times throughout the next 2 episodes. He's in there quite a bit. The ambush is successful, and there's lots of great fight scenes. Ezra managed to get his jetpack on Ulrich for him to escape before the transport drops off of a cliff.
Yeah, and I forgot to put in the notes here because we had mentioned the names Ursa and Tristan Wren. That is Sabine's mother and brother, who they're fighting. They're the ones that their forces have forced the convoy into the canyon here. Ezra Jedi's his way up all 3 convoy vehicles towards the cliff. So they're like falling off the cliff, and he's jumping from vehicle to vehicle, trying to make it back to the cliff and not die. So he's like on the edge of the cliff, but starts falling before Sabine saves him. And I'm not sure how I feel about the physics of her jetpack weight, like weighing her hanging down off the mountain to grab him. But
you're not going to say anything about the physics of Ezra force jumping up those.
Well, he's a force user, you know. I can allow for some of that, you know. But so we see some character building between Bo-Katan and Fen Rao. They're from 2 different clans, we need to remember, from Mandalore. We find a Captain Hark talking to Saxon. Saxon confirms that they planned well, meaning the rebels, but that they're going to deploy their new weapon, and that's before all is said and done, they will all kneel before the Duchess.
The Duchess,
which we'll find out what the Duchess is.
Right, that was Satine's name.
Satine's name.
So we then have a touching Sabine Ulrich moment. Her father is apparently where she gets her artistic influence from, which makes sense because her mother is certainly not an artistic type.
Yeah, that's true.
The reunion is cut short as a single scout walker comes in as the rest of the forces are evacuating. Sabine yells for them to get out of there. She hears the sound of the weapon over the comms. She recognizes the sound. The group rushes to the battle, but when they arrive, they don't find anybody at all, just pieces of Mandalorian armor and ash where there used to be a body. As it turns out, this was the weapon that Sabine created when she worked for the Empire. That's why she recognized the sound.
Yeah, so they were in 2 different areas, and essentially this machine attacked her mother and brother's forces, and then this is what happened when they got there. So that's where Part 1 ends. So then we get into Heroes of Mandalore Part 2. Episode 2 picks up right where the first one left off. Sabine's basically kneeling in the ground. She's picking up a piece of armor, and it just kind of shatters into ash as she picks it up. Bo-Katan remarks about hearing about a weapon like this, but she didn't believe it. Sabine has an emotional outburst of anger and sadness because of her invention. We think her mother and brother are dead, but they're alive. Her warning managed to get them out of the main blast. They were at the edge of the weapon's range, but they were beat up a bit.
Yeah. And the Empire comes back with jetpack troopers to finish off the job, see if anybody was left over, but they weren't anticipating such heavy forces since the others joined them. It was a bit of a standoff with the Empire getting the upper hand and TIE fighters coming in until a Mandalorian ship comes into the rescue. Bo-Katan puts the liftgate down, and Ezra asks where she's going. Their weapons are down, and she remarks that a Mandalorian with a jetpack is a weapon. She then jumps out to do something about the 2 TIE fighters. Ezra says, a Mandalorian? I don't want to be a Mandalorian. That was a cute little...
Yeah, that made me laugh out loud. Like, I watched it twice, and it cracked me up both times. Just the way he said it, like, I don't want to be a Mandalorian.
Right. Ezra and Bo-Katan managed to destroy the 2 TIE fighters with their rockets on their jetpacks.
So that was pretty cool. Yep. So Saxon shows a video. We're now cutting to like Saxon in person. He's showing a video of a Mandalore soldier getting smoked to death, basically. Yeah. The Beskar alloy in the Mandalore armor gets superheated, and it doesn't affect the stormtroopers at all. And there, via hologram, is our first appearance of Admiral Thrawn.
Yep.
Saxon states the weapon's operational and effective. Thrawn points out that he missed the true artistry of this weapon, which was taking a Mandalore strength and turning it into a weakness. Saxon says there was a need to have the problem dealt with quickly and that this will bring a quick end to any uprising. Thrawn states that he is different than his brother and asks him how Gar would feel for betraying his heritage. And Tiber remarks that he no longer feels much of anything since he's dead. Thrawn asks if they will all become loyal after the defeat, and Saxon says a Mandalore without their armor is just a regular man, and fear will compel them to be loyal. Thrawn remarks the weapon's range isn't nearly as long as it was claimed to be. This was probably my favorite exchange in the entire 2 episodes. Just 2 interesting characters. Yeah. It was really cool.
And after Thrawn leaves, Captain Hark asks what's going to stop the Empire from using the weapon on them as well. And Saxon replies, unquestioning loyalty. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. He then tells them to find Sabine because they need Sabine to make the weapon, reach its full capacity.
Yeah.
Back on the ship, Bo-Katan has a confrontation with Sabine after Tristan asks her about destroying it. Sabine said she destroyed it and the plans, but that the Empire must have figured out how to rebuild it, but obviously not very well since it's not as strong as it was. Bo-Katan asked her why she would create it as its coward's weapon. Sabine said she was young and arrogant, saw it as a challenge, so, a kid's going to take up a challenge. Yeah. When she saw the Empire, when she found out that the Empire had tested it, she sabotaged it and destroyed the blueprints.
Yeah. So Ezra questions why they just don't use different armor. Ulrich and Sabine talk about how it's part of their identity, how it's old and passed down. She remarks her armor is like 500 years old, and she remodeled it for herself.
Yeah, but if she's dead, it doesn't matter. Anyway,
oh, I agree with that.
Yeah, that was not a smart thing to do.
It makes the Mandalorians who they are. So it's a very, very important thing for their culture. It's not just some piece of armor. It defines them, essentially, was what they're saying.
Yeah, but if they're all dead, there won't be any culture left. Just saying.
So when they get back to camp, Sabine has had a couple of Mandalorians train their weapons on her for betraying them because they've obviously found out that this weapon was her creation. Her parents said any attack on her was an attack on Clan Ren, but she told them that she'll face what's coming to her, but the weapon's only at a fraction of its capacity, that it can destroy whole armies at full capacity. She said they can fight each other or destroy the weapon for once and for all. Bo-Katan actually backs her up here and then turns to her after the confrontation, after the other Mandalorians leave, and tells her she needs to prove her loyalty not just to her family, but to all of Mandalore.
Right, and as they're discussing the battle plan, Fenn Rau pulls Bo-Katan aside and talks about her support for Sabine, and it says that she sees something in Sabine that can inspire people, that she's courageous, which I agree with.
Yeah.
She came back to defend herself against her past, and that she sees something in her of what Mandalorians should be again, and she won't let those efforts be wasted.
Yeah, that was a cool discussion, and it really makes me just, when I see those characters interacting and just that armor and stuff, I want to see a live-action movie involving Mandalorians.
That would be a really cool spinoff.
They begin the infiltration of the ship housing the weapon, which is a Star Destroyer, and Sabine says that she suspects the Duchess is being worked on upstairs, and Bo-Katan remarks, "You named the weapon after my sister." And Sabine says it was a series of bad decisions, which cracked me up a lot. They encounter resistance early. Fenn Rau and forces are holding off troops as Bo-Katan and Sabine make it to the weapon, and Kanan, Ezra, and Chopper make a run to the data center to remove any information on the project and the weapon. Naturally, upstairs is where Bo-Katan and Sabine almost make it to the weapon, and of course, it's a trap.
Of course, it is.
And the weapon was activated as a small percentage, at a very small percentage, to hurt the two of them, but not kill them because they need Sabine.
Right. And of course, in walks Saxon and his captain, both wearing their Mandalorian armor. I'm sorry. Saxon was wearing Stormtrooper armor. Yeah. He tells his captain to step back so that he doesn't get hurt. Yeah. And Saxon states that he needs Sabine alive to make the weapon more powerful. So that's when he tells his captain to step back, because if it is more powerful, what's going to stop the Empire from using it against them? Captain Hark says. And Saxon exclaims that he is the Empire.
Yeah.
Now, he's completely switched over now.
Yeah.
And the Palpatine has showed him the way to true power.
Yeah, so he's talked to Palps at this point, right? A little surprising, but kudos, dude.
He then turns around and uses his arm controller to increase the intensity of the Duchess, and now that Captain Hark has moved up closer, he's caught in it as well, and Sabine, as well as Sabine and Bo-Katan. Yeah. Saxon says that this is a lesson, and in the end, all of Mandalore will bow to him.
Yeah, so keep in mind, this is like the second time this guy is like, hey, like, what happens, if this... Right. So now he's annoyed at this guy.
Right.
We get some action shots of Kanan and Ezra fighting stormtroopers, and they're erasing everything in the data control room with Chopper. And Ezra tries to contact Sabine. She's not responding, so he ends up going out to where the fighting is, because Kanan's like, go check on her. They see all this fighting going on. Fenn Rau's men. Kanan's got his own fight going on. He ends out there. He's telling Tristan that he finished his mission. Now he's got to finish theirs too. So they bicker a little bit, just messing around. And, he asks where Sabine is, and they point to the upstairs area where that weapon is.
And of course, up there, Saxon is now flanked by 2 stormtroopers who apparently aren't interested in taking Mandalorian blaster shots downstairs, so they went upstairs. He has his weapon trained on Bo-Katan, and He said that he'll shoot her if Sabine doesn't fix the weapon to his liking. And of course, Sabine agrees to do it, despite Bo-Katan's plea not to, and ends up working on the weapon. Saxon states it's better to do this instead of fighting a war they can't win. Sabine finishes working on the weapon and says that it's better to die a free Mandalorian than bowing down to the Emperor. Very similar to, I'd rather die on my knees than, or I'd rather die on my feet than be lit on my knees. He says the weapon's finished, but she begs him to please not use it. Saxon says he'll take that into consideration, and then, of course, he immediately uses it.
Yeah, what a shocker. Obviously, she was expecting this.
Right.
The weapon immediately targets all of the stormtroopers and their armor, including the sellout Saxon, who doesn't even wear his Mandalorian armor anymore.
Right.
Bo-Katan, Sabine, and Captain Hark are unharmed. Captain Hark runs out of the room. Stormtroopers outside/downstairs, like outside the room and down the stairs in the huge bay area. They're doing all the fighting and they're falling to the weapon because basically it's like this lightning shot that's like shooting through these guys.
Right. And every time it hits one of them, it jumps off them to another one.
Yeah, it's basically arcing to another trooper. Yep. Yeah, it goes all the way down to even where Kanan's still fighting. Bo-Katan, and it even hits Ezra's helmet because he's always wearing like a stormtrooper helmet or whatever. He's like and he like throws his helmet off. So, anyways, Bo-Katan asks Sabine to stop. Says because they're really hurting, especially upstairs now. They're probably they're looking at dying basically. She asks Sabine to stop and asks whether the future of Mandalore will be one of honor or cowardice, and basically that's what this weapon is, or hope or fear. Sabine uses the black saber to destroy the weapon down the middle of the power core. They have to make a quick exit because naturally the whole place will explode, and after they leave, the Star Destroyer does fall to its demise, which makes me beg the question, why did you care so much about
Right. All of those stormtroopers were just left to die on this ship. Yeah. So what did it matter if they died in the exploding ship or whether they died
in
by
a pile of ash? Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Though I guess that was really more just paralyzing to them, right? Because maybe she changed it in a way where they couldn't actually die because of their
the settings were clearly turned down. I
Right.
think the setting was probably still about as strong as it was when he was using against Sabine and Bo-Katan. And after they get back, Bo-Katan and Sabine are having a talk. Katan says that Katan says that Sabine was able to make the right decision, which again I don't think so, but anyway. Sabine says that she did she only did it with her guidance, and the Bo-Katan has the true wisdom to be a ruler, and that she isn't alone in thinking that everybody else does too. So when the gate drops, all the other clans are waiting there. And they all state their support for Bo-Katan. Even Sabine's mother steps up and says Clan Wren does. Sabine then says she knows why the saber came to her now. It came to her so she could give it to Bo-Katan. Sabine offers the black saber to Bo-Katan, and this time she accepts. And there we go.
Yeah, so a couple of things about these episodes I wanted to remark on. One, I feel there was a missed opportunity in part one.
How's that?
I feel like the story could have taken a completely different direction, and maybe it's just not a direction they wanted to go, with her mother and brother actually being killed in that blast.
Well, I mean, they've said, Dave Filoni says that this season is going to be much darker.
Yeah, so and maybe that will happen later on. I just kind of expected it because it was obvious at this point now that the story with mom was resolved in the last season.
Well, I think the reason they didn't do that is because that would have made Satine want to stay. And even though she
even
turned,
after they rescued the father,
right? Even after she turned it over to Bo-Katan to lead all of Mandalore, she would have stayed to lead Clan Wren.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably why they didn't do that.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think it would have been interesting to see that death.
Yeah, I was expecting it. When you got the impression they were dead at first, I was like, oh,
right.
Like,
well, I mean, think about how you were if you went to Star Wars Celebration this year when they showed the first episode and left it at that for months and months and months until they finally. I mean, so everybody who went to Star Wars Celebration thought they were dead for months.
I'm very curious to see what happens with Captain Hark. Even though he fled, this guy had concerns about this weapon being used on Mandalorians. He brought it up twice before Saxon struck him down, and then he doesn't stay with them. He runs off. I am very interested to see if his character makes a reappearance or if maybe they don't bring him back at all. But I feel like the way that character was written, we didn't see him a lot, but he was in there just enough where it makes me think like they might do something for this guy later down the line.
Well, and I guess that brings up the question is whether or not they're finished with the Mandalore story at this point. I think that I don't think that they are. I think that they could be because they needed to give Sabine a reason to go back to the Ghost.
So the guy's Clan Saxon, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
He's there. So maybe he does end up in the long run supporting
The Empire still, maybe?
No.
Oh, he'd be going back to Mandalore?
Maybe going back to Mandalore and putting his support back behind Bo-Katan and, and owning up to his mistakes, etc.
I tell you, it's been great seeing much more of the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars and Rebels both. Obviously the only bits and pieces we got about it before was, Boba Fett wearing this really cool armor and everybody wants to know what it is. It's, they made up some word. It's Mandalorian armor. Now they've given that some real meaning.
Yeah.
Which I think that's important for the story. I'm really glad to see that.
Yeah.
So, we're coming to the end of the show, but we want to give you guys an opportunity to really help us out. We haven't had any new supporters lately, but we'd really love to have your support for as little as even $1 an episode. And you can get all the details at resisttheempirepodcast.com/support. And just, gives us some validation. Really lets us know that you guys love what we're doing. Also, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. You can see the videos of all of our episodes up there at resisttheempirepodcast.com/YouTube. And definitely be sure to check out our next episode because that's when we're going to give you all the details about our 24-hour marathon watch of Star Wars Episode 1 through Episode 7 through Episode 8 at the theaters since Brian so awesomely got us first run tickets. I can't wait for that. Yeah. We'll give you all the details about that then and where you can donate for the Starlight Foundation. Until next time,
may the non-initiation of Force be with you.
Thank you for listening to Resist the Empire. Thank you for listening to Resist the Empire. Find us online at resisttheempirepodcast.com and on Twitter at Empire Resistor. Never miss an episode by subscribing on any podcatcher or by going to resisttheempirepodcast.com/subscribe. This has been a PAX Libertas Productions podcast.